We're going to be getting legal as we look at all types of law, natural, revealed, and eternal. Our big goal is happiness in this life and heaven in the next. To achieve this, we need to stay close to God throughout each day. But how do we do that while living in the real world with all of its challenges and distractions? Growing our interior life through Christian mental prayer is the answer. This podcast mines the riches of the greatest spiritual tradition on earth so we can grow in holiness together. I'm Steve Smith. Thank you for joining me for Pearls of the Interior Life. Welcome to this episode of Pearls of the Interior Life. Thank you for making this time for the Lord. It's always good to be with you and be a part of that. In this Sunday's Mass readings, they have much to do with law. Teacher, what must I do to be perfect? And Christ steps back and takes a look at the law, the prescriptive law, the old law, and then the new law, the law of the Spirit, the law of freedom and generosity. There's a lot going on that has a legal aspect to it in society around us these days, and law at all levels. When we just look at everything that is going on, that is turning us upside down and has us at each other in one way or another, comes back to law, because law has to do with how we interact with one another. So let's get our terms straight first, and then that'll help us lay the groundwork of making some heads and tails out of this, especially what does it mean to our spiritual life and how we engage the world around us when everything seems to be in some ways devolving into a state of lawlessness. First, law is a rule of conduct established by an authority, a rule of conduct established by an authority, a rule of conduct, how we conduct ourselves, how we get along with one another, established by an authority. In civil law, obviously, it's going to be for us the government that establishes that, and thank heavens that we have that, and hopefully we'll continue to have that. We'll see. But there's many different levels and ordering to law, so let's look at those. First, at the highest level that we want to start is the eternal law, and that is God himself. God completely outside of our created universe. There should probably be a lot. I don't know if it's coming through the microphone or not. My dog snoring in the background, but it's actually kind of entertaining, I suppose. But God is eternal law. He is law. He is truth. He is reality. He is pure being. He is complete self-sufficiency, self-consistency. He is complete justice. He is complete truth, and so on. He is the completeness of law, that conduct. Look at the relationship between the Trinity. Right, so it is from that eternal law that everything else flows. But at the most basic level, we have the natural law, that basic idea of right and wrong that is imprinted in each of us. And we'll circle back to these in a little bit, but do not kill, do not steal, and so on. Just the natural law that is written into each of our hearts. And what is key here is that is accessible to all of us. Now, it's accessible. It doesn't mean that we are aware of it. There's much that then distracts us from it. But the natural law is knowable to everyone. Then we have revealed law, which builds on the natural law. We have revealed law both in the old law, which is most apparent in the Ten Commandments. We have aspects of the natural law there. Again, don't steal, don't covet thy neighbor's wife, so on. But then we also have revelation of God. You have only one God. Do not take his name in vain. Keep holy the Sabbath. The groundwork of revelation. Then we have the new law, the law of the gospel, the completeness, the fullness of revealed law, made especially apparent in the Beatitudes and Great Commandments. And then from these then come civil law and church law. All right, so the different types of law that govern our relationships with one another and with God. And this is what we want to dig into a bit. But to get there, a place to start is actually stepping outside to an even more kind of primal level, and looking at the laws of nature. The law that we were looking at had to do with law of interaction of individuals and us with our Maker. But beneath that, lower than that at the physical level, are just the physical laws of nature that are revealed by our reason, by experience, by observation, by the scientific method. And here's something kind of interesting about that. In this day and age, especially in our scientific and secular culture, there's a big emphasis put on this, STEM and science. Thanks, I'll just follow the science, thank you, that kind of thing. But in reality, we don't really care for science and the natural physical laws, as opposed to the natural moral law, the natural physical laws that are revealed by science. At least we're pretty fickle about it. Let's take gravity. Okay, take gravity. I own a home, and gravity can work for and against me. We're fortunate to have a pool. Gravity works really well. Without it, the water wouldn't stay in the pool. I guess it'd be kind of interesting just to sort of float around with just these little droplets of water cascading around us. But it's the physical laws of nature that keep the water in the pool, that give us surface tension and buoyancy and all those other good things. Great, yay nature, that's fine. I also have a roof on my house, and that's a good thing, in that it keeps the outside and the inside in. It's a bad thing if I have to do work on the roof. Now suddenly I don't care for gravity all that much. Gravity becomes a real pain in the keister to deal with, and on it goes. And most of it really doesn't work for us, because the physical laws of nature, they include entropy and decay and degradation. I have a fence. What happens? The wood warps because it dries differentially, preferentially to the topside, exposed to the sun. You have to keep coating it or replacing it when it gets warped too much. Or the lawn keeps growing. You constantly have to cut it, photosynthesis. Actually, the lawn is just fine. Tractor time is a good thing. Tractor time is where a lot of the motivation comes for these episodes. Be that good or bad, make them what you will. Kind of that Zen thing of just going in straight lines. Actually, it's not a Zen thing. It's a Christian thing. In all things that you do them for the Lord and for His glory, out of Colossians. Point being, though, we're not necessarily the biggest fans of the natural physical laws and how they're revealed by science. But here's the trick, or better yet, the bottom line of it all is, we don't have any say in the natural physical laws and how they manifest themselves. They are manifest whether or not we like them, we go along with them, we agree with them. They will happen, and it is at our peril if we deny them. I can deny gravity, but that's not going to work in my favor really well when I'm working on my roof, because gravity isn't going to deny me. It is going to work no matter what I prefer, no matter how I decide to act on it with my will. The physical laws are always manifest. It's a little bit different now when we move to the natural moral law. Remember, now this is the moral law that is imprinted on everyone's heart. St. Augustine is a lovely way of putting this, that it's much like how a signet ring imprints an image into soft wax. If you seal a letter with it, for example, as they did in the old days, you can picture, the Scarlet Pimpernel, sealing a letter or something like that. Well, that natural law is written in our hearts, and it's revealed to us particularly by our conscience. And it's revealed to us by God in revelation as well. But again, we can all come to an awareness of the natural moral law. That's why it's the natural moral law, not the revealed moral law, through our conscience. If we're listening, we talked about conscience a few months ago, I believe, and the Catechism is that great phrase that it is the messenger of God. Our conscience is really God speaking to us at the most base level of our being and telling us right from wrong. But you may recall also from a few months ago, Fulton Sheen he made the clarification, we really have two consciences. We have the conscience, made in the image of God. We have the conscience made in the image of the world. And that is the one left to our own devices we tend to listen to. And the world does not care much for the natural moral law any longer. That is the law that says there's man and woman, that tells us how marriage is supposed to work, that constrains our passions and our impulses and our desires and our ambitions. Again, the world, that aspect of our conscience, the moral law, very much out of favor these days. But here's the bottom line on this. Now, the distinction again between the natural physical laws and the natural moral laws is the natural physical laws are always made manifest. Gravity is always going to act on me no matter what I do. The natural moral law requires my free will to be made manifest in the world. Here's the thing though, that doesn't mean there isn't still consequences for denying it. The physical laws of gravity, I can deny them. I can deny them all I want when I'm on the roof. But if I decide, gee, I'd like to just take the shortcut down instead of the ladder and step off the roof, gravity is going to make itself apparent really quick. So too with the natural moral law. We can deny it. We can refuse to make it manifest in the world through our actions. We can deny the reality of man and women. We can deny the reality of a preborn child in the womb and so on. But boy, the consequences are still there. Consequences are still there, and much of the consequence is made manifest in our soul. When we wound ourselves, we wound others, we wound our relationship with God and with one another. And this is what we see going on so much around us right now, and that's the point of this session. Here's two aspects from Scripture, and this was just from this week. God speaking to Jonah. And should I not be concerned over Nineveh, the great city in which there are more than 120,000 persons who cannot distinguish their right hand from their left? They are no longer following the natural law written in their hearts. Isaiah has this to say: those who call evil good and good evil, who change darkness to light and light into darkness, who change bitter to sweet and sweet into bitter. Again, don't we see that in this day and age when we have everything reversed, everything turned upside down? So this brings us now to revealed law as we transition from just the natural moral law to what is revealed to us by God. And as we said before, it starts in the old law, in the Old Testament. Primarily we see that in the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments that give us both that formalism of the natural law. Everyone understands the taking of innocent life is wrong. Theft is wrong. Slander is wrong. Covetousness and envy is wrong. But it expands it to revealing the basic precepts and duties that we have in our relationship with God. We have no other God but the Lord God. We have the duty to honor him on the Sabbath, to not take his name in vain. And then Christ comes on the scene and he takes this, he advances it, he perfects it, particularly in the great commandments to love God and love neighbor as himself. And then the Beatitudes that show us that perfection of Christian virtue, a life wholly transformed. What does it look like when we really do seek our neighbor's good and God before ourselves? That is a life of beatitude. And where does that bring us now? We see every aspect of this, even down to the physical laws. We are trying to literally deny the physical laws of what it means to be man and woman, of what it means to be a preborn infant. We see that just the basic premise of the old law being denied in so many ways. Certainly the new law, everything is turned upside down. It makes it very difficult for us to know how to respond in that new law. When do we shake the dust from our feet versus when do we stay and be that voice of mercy? When do we speak truth to our neighbor? When is it time just to remain silent and intercede for them with the Lord? Very, very difficult to do. And this brings us where it always brings us. This is why personal growth in holiness, personal growth in relationship with God, and through his church and through his revelation is always at the heart of it. Because that is how, we form our conscience properly. So at our most interior level, we are hearing that messenger of God, that sure and reliable voice that will guide us, as opposed to those other voices that are so good at getting us off track. But it's leading a sacramental life, spending daily time in mental prayer, especially growing in holiness. And growing in holiness and virtue here, especially, it's that twofold. It means, one, living out beatitude, living out service of our neighbor, pouring ourselves out like a libation, like Paul would say. But then also turning away from the allurements, the false charms of the world. I think that line, we become bewitched, the witchery of created things that kind of dazzle the eye. And why? Because it is these things, we live that sacramental life, that time in mental prayer, growing in holiness, that brings us back to the eternal law that transcends all of this. When we do that, we are getting directly in touch at the core of our being with the person who is law itself. And then everything else will naturally get ordered to that. Then we'll know how to respond in each situation. We'll be able to look and see clearly what is right and what is wrong, and most importantly, how we're called to respond to it. Sometimes that's the toughest part. I've been having those challenges myself lately, of probably all too often acting out in anger, and not the good kind, not the righteous anger, the prideful anger. So it's not just recognizing right from wrong, but recognizing what are we called to in those situations. So hard to do these days. So some general reflections on law. Hopefully there's something in there that is of fruit for you in however you're experiencing the world right now. But for sure, none of us are getting through this unscathed. Everyone has some aspect of their life where they're being greatly challenged by the culture around them, and discerning how to respond in that, how to respond in love, but also, how to respond in justice, how to respond within the spirit of the law and all that the law entails. So with that, I pray for a wonderful week for you ahead. Listen to those messages about the law and how God envisions each of us working with and participating in his perfect eternal law. And I look forward to being with you again.